Hello, my name is Francisca Na Ajelede Bragrant, and today I'll be doing a presentation on the topic Understanding of Perspective in Psychology, which will include the following: describe at least two psychological perspectives, evaluate key assumptions of the identified psychological perspective, evaluate the key theories relating to each of the identified perspectives. Analyze the similarities and the differences between at least two perspectives in psychology, then evaluate the application of two psychological perspectives to contemporary issues in psychology. Now, psychology is the study and exploration of human thoughts, emotions, mind, and behavior, which include both conscious and unconscious elements. Psychologist has given us many ways to explain human challenging behaviors, called psychological perspective. These provide framework for understanding how individuals think, feel, and behave, which is crucial for effective care delivery. Psychological perspective offer insight into various aspects of human experience, including behavior, development, and mental health, allowing practitioners to tailor interventions and support strategies to meet diverse needs. There are five major perspectives in psychology, namely behaviorism psychology, cognitive psychology, psychoanalysis or psychodynamic psychology, biological psychology, and social psychology. Each of these perspectives in psychology explain human behaviors differently, but I will be focusing on two of these psychological perspectives for my presentation. Behaviorism psychology. So this psychological perspective emphasizes the significance of desirable behaviors because of learning through interactions with the environment. It is based on the idea that all behaviors are acquired through conditioning, involving the process of reinforcement and punishment. In behavioral psychology, it is suggested that a child enters the world as a blank state, and the development and identity are impacted by the experiences and lessons learned in their surroundings. In the field of animal behaviorism, this behaviorist uses a type of stimulus to work with animals. A neutral stimulus, such as a bell, can be linked to become associated with a meaningful stimulus, like food, relating to a learned response, which is salivation. So this is a process called classical conditioning. On the other hand, operant conditioning entails associative learning, where behaviors are influenced by its consequences. For example, when you ask a dog to sit and he performs the behavior, we give it a treat. The next time you ask the dog to sit, it is more likely to perform the behavior. This also applies to human. For instance, when a child gets a reward for answering a question in class, it increases the likelihood of a behavior being repeated. Conversely, punishment decreases the probability of a behavior occurring again. Cognitive psychology. So this psychology also emphasizes the mental processes, which include how people think, learn, remember, and solve problems. Cognitive work on certain principles, including the following: selective attention. So this principle means that the brain cannot hold or function on too much information on a go, just one at a time. Perception. This is also where the brain can easily be misled by optical illusions, leading us to believe that our eyes are deceiving us when in fact it is our brain. So it's psychological, cognitive psychology. So it also concentrates on mental processes. So this is tailored around human cognitive processes such as attention, language use, memory, perception, creativity, reasoning, and problem solving. It also adapts a scientific approach by examining how we analyze information on our surroundings, storing and transferring this information and using it to guide actions. So just as computers receive data, store and process it internally, and then generate an output, our brain operates in the same manner of action. So the strength of behaviorism. It is grounded on classical and operant conditioning. These ideas play a role in psychological treatment methods. For instance, systematic desensitization, founded on classical conditioning principle, is effectively employed to address phobias. So limitations of behaviorism. It also fails to acknowledge conscious self-awareness, into brackets active human agency, which is linked to language development, foresight, and self-reflectiveness. So because reflexes arise from interactions with the environment, behaviorism cannot make clear individual differences in learning due to the diversity in learning styles and their impact on personality. Cognitive key assumptions. Internal mental processes can be studied empirically by using experimentation and surveys, which allow researchers to understand how they work and they can affect results. So it also suggests that the mind works similarly to a computer, as both processes information in the same way. To the strength of cognitive. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is effective in combating depression by identifying individual problems, and these cognitive thoughts, feelings, and actions can be applied to treat conditions like depression to improve individual well-being. The practical application of cognitive psychology assists individuals to engage in more positive and fulfilling activities. The limitation of cognitive. It ignores the impact of emotions on behavioral results, simplifying human actions to a computer level. CBT treatment may not be appropriate for everyone, particularly those with complex needs such as bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. So this is an evaluation of the key theorist, behaviorist theorist, which is Ivan Pavlov. Classical conditioning, discovered by Ivan Pavlov, explained how a neutral stimulus becomes associated with an unconditioned response. In the year 1897, he experimented with dogs in training dogs to salivate at the sound of a bell repeatedly, eventually causing the dog to salivate. Natural stimulus, which is a bell, and the unconditioned stimulus, which is the food. Limitations of Ivan Pavlov theory. So classical conditioning is limited to explaining how reflex responses become associated with new stimuli. However, much human behavior is voluntary and therefore cannot be explained by classical conditioning. And then classical conditioning ignores the influence of cognitive processes like expectation and understanding and biological factors, which have also been shown to play a role in learning. I've got B.F. Skinner's. The concept of the operant conditioning developed by the B.F. Skinner explained how consequences shape behavior. The Skinner box, a controlled environment, allowed Skinner to observe how reward and punishment affect animal behavior in the year 1938. It emphasizes positive reinforcement by adding something desirable, which strengthens a behavior, while negative reinforcement entails removing an unpleasant stimulus. So the limitation of the BF Skinner's. So it overemphasizes on external behavior. Critics argue that by focusing exclusively on observable behaviors and environmental consequences, the theory fails to adequately account for the richness of human cognition, emotion, and social interaction. Understanding cultural contextual factors in shaping behavior is neglected. The theory did not consider the cultural differences. Reinforcement and punishment functions can vary based on cultural norms and practices. So, cognitive theorist Jean Piaget. Jean Piaget introduced and highlighted the cognitive development of children and the acquisition of understanding. One of his work is titled The Origin of Intelligence in Children, and was published in the year 1936. Piaget made us understand how children's thinking develops through distinct stages through natural conversations. Limitation of the Jean Piaget. Piaget's theory lacks the acknowledgement of the importance of social and cultural interactions on child development, such as gender roles, general upbringing, and diversity are not adequately addressed. The age bands do not allow for children to develop at different paces, nor do they consider any additional needs, hence inflexibility in the developmental stage. Similarities of both behaviorism and cognitive perspective. Both perspectives aim to explain human behavior. Both spotlighted nature and nurture, noting that we inherit genes, hormones, and brain structures. And then both also recognize that external environmental factors play a crucial role in shaping behaviors. Both also use an approach research techniques, utilizing scientific and statistical methods to gather data, as well as depending on theories, personal observations, reflections, and previous studies. The differences between the behaviorism and cognitive. Behaviorism psychology believes that all behaviors are acquired from the environment, whereas cognitive believes that cognitive processes play a role in influencing behavior. So the behaviorism psychology concentrates on observable behaviors and it links to rewards and punishments, whereas cognitive psychology delves into internal processes such as decision making and memory. Behaviorism uses models, measurable behaviors, observation, conditioning, and other techniques to modify behavior. And cognitive psychology employs a range of methods, including laboratories, experiments, case studies, and computer simulations to explore the complexities of mental functioning. So, application of the two psychological perspectives. So, this is behaviorism. This perspective focuses on the approach to observing others and learning from their behavior. The behavioral theory tells how people react to various events rather than emphasizing internal factors such as memory and decision making. The strength. Positive role models can impact others by showcasing inclusive behavior. It also encourages people to offer rewards or incentives to strengthen desired actions, hence supporting positive reinforcement. The weaknesses. Behaviorism struggle to address difficult human capabilities such as language learning, creativity, and abstract thinking. It also receives insufficient attention on cognitive skills as it only emphasizes observable behavior, which means critical thinking, problem solving, and other mental complexities were overlooked. Cognitive. The cognitive perspective in psychology explains the concept of the way people process and understand information in their mind and how it affects their behavior. It also highlighted internal mental activities, including memory, attention, decision making, and problem solving, which all contribute to shaping our actions. Strength. It the cognitive perspective is utilized in cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, into bracket and bracket close, where it's aimed to modify negative thought patterns by recognizing triggers and adjusting responses. Individuals can enhance their mental well-being. Cognitive strength. It supports reshaping and inaccurate thinking. People who are addressed or have issues with learning disabilities, cognitive psychologists supports in developing strategies and techniques to enhance their memory. The weaknesses. It ignores the significance of emotions and motivation, concentrating solely on the cognitive process. The structure approach of CBT may not be a good fit for everyone, and it is not a suitable treatment for all mental health issues, for example, schizophrenia. In conclusion, both the behaviorism and cognitive perspective offer considerable influence on human behavior. The behaviorism theory emphasizes observable learning and how it is shaped by reinforcement and punishment. The theory also suggests behaviors that are as a result of observation and copying role models in an environment, making it effective in developing behavior therapies. Nevertheless, it failed to spot out the significance of the internal mental processes such as memory, problem solving, and decision making. Behaviorist perspective in psychology also recognize important figures such as Ivan Pavlov, who introduced classical conditioning involving the association of an unconditioned stimulus that naturally brings about a particular response. Additionally, B.F. Skinner, a prominent American psychologist and behaviorist, was instrumental in developing the concept of operant conditioning and created the Skinner box to explore how behavior is influenced by its consequences. Meanwhile, cognitive perspective highlights how internal mental processes such as memory, perception, and decision making influence behavior. The cognitive psychologist can support memory disorder. However, critics believe this perspective neglects the impact of emotions and social factors and reduces human activity to a computer level. Thank you.